أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. We seek refuge in God from Satan, who was the basic cause for us being here in this world. And may God make it backfire on Satan, give us happiness in this world and forever, through believing in God alone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. We are going to start to Surah 51, page 366. And our teacher tonight, I forgot his name. I don't know, do you remember? What's your name, sir?
Rashid.
What's your name?
Rashid. Doug.
I'm serious, he actually forgot. Rashid?
Douglas Brown.
Oh, Douglas Brown?
Yes.
You're sure?
I'm sure of that.
Okay.
You'll find out later when I
He's a very nervous teacher today. And you can guess, first, that we're having a wedding tonight. The most handsome guy is the groom, and you can tell who the prettiest girl in town tonight is. So as soon as we finish the Quranic study, we're going to have these two united, inshallah. Okay, Douglas.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. If I lose my speech or get tongue twisted tonight, you all know why. So
You're excused.
Okay. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. By the blowing winds carrying clouds and bringing bounties to be distributed by command. What is promised to you is truth. Judgment is sure to come. I'd like to stop here. I'd like to stop first of all and bear witness that the clouds and the winds have came and they're bringing bounty outside right now. And we know that that promise is true. Today Abdullah went over some more characteristics of the code, proving that when Allah says He has preserved the Quran, He's preserved it. That Allah has all knowledge, and it doesn't make any difference what a person does or they don't do, what disbelievers believe, feel, and think. It doesn't really make any difference what type of power that a person has in this world, influence or whatever. They simply cannot overwhelm Allah. He knows what they have and what they don't have, and He controls everything, their thoughts. And just like Allah brings the rain, the bounty, He brings a life by His command. And it's distributed equally, so that in one way or another, all of us are nourished by the water. The very process in creation by which rain is produced is a miracle in itself, in terms of the orbit of the earth within a specific angle in relationship to the sun and the change of the seasons. Many people don't know that the 24-hour difference in heat and cold in the earth causes the winds to flow on the earth. That's one of the things that causes the winds to flow, the alternation of light and darkness, of the heat and cold. And just imagine what it would be like if it was night all the time, or day all the time. These laws that Allah has created, these winds would not travel as they do in bringing the bounty to us. What is promised to you is true. God is telling us as sure as we can see the rain in front of our eyes, as sure as we can see the majesty of the clouds in the sky and how it becomes saturated and it falls, this is true. What God promises is true. And the judgment is sure to come. Why do we know that it's sure to come? Because God tells us it's sure to come. That's one of the reasons. As was pointed out in the khutbah, The minimum requirement to be a Muslim is to submit. To submit to what God tells us and what He teaches us. One of the most recent discoveries concerning the time of the Day of Judgment was made the other day by Mahmoud and I think Sister Isan and Emily. Surah 72 verse 27 speaks to the fact that only Allah gives His messenger any knowledge of the past, present, or future. Only the messengers that He chooses may be given certain information concerning the past or the future. What Mahmoud and Sister Isan and Emily had done was they took the geometrical value, I guess it's a geometrical value of the name Rashad and the name Khalifa and the surah number and the verse number, and they put these numbers in a series. Just like Abdullah showed us today when we saw the chapter and the verse and the chapter, he put them in a straight line and it's divisible by 19. So not only do we know that God's messenger is given the knowledge of the future, we also know that God willed that His messenger of the covenant be given knowledge of the future. And if people say, well, there are millions of individuals named Rashad, okay, because you can just take the value of the word Rashad and put it next to chapter 72, next to verse 27, and it too is a multiple of 19. But there is only one Rashad Khalifa. Confirmation of the time of the Day of Judgment and what God promises us is true. Despite the perfectly created sky, you dispute the truth. The stars, the sun, the moon, these clouds, how Allah keeps the oxygen and hydrogen, how He keeps certain gases within the Earth's atmosphere, how He prevents things that are dangerous and harmful to us from entering the atmosphere, how ever since He created the Earth, the cycle of rainfall has not changed, the evaporation, precipitation. None of this has changed. Despite the perfectly created sky, the constellations at night, where humans have given names to these constellations. Because when they look up at these stars, they see certain patterns that they relate to, certain figures and patterns. And just like Prophet Abraham, he looked up at the stars and he realized that this was not an accident. These stars and planets could not be positioned in the sky to produce this beauty, to control the movements of other heavenly bodies. There had to be some higher being responsible for this. And God tells us in the Surah, despite these signs, these magnificent signs that are right before us, when we turn on the faucet, we have a sign. We drink it. Without it, we die. Let alone look at the sky. There is dispute. There is confusion. Why is there? Well, what are some of the reasons for the dispute and the confusion? Well, we know that this is Satan's kingdom. He's incompetent. He thought that he could be a god. He entertained thoughts that he could run a universe, a world with creatures, and God put him to the test. And his incompetence, along with individual decisions, intentions, create this doubt. Although Satan was very incompetent, he is also a master. He is a master deceiver. He's extremely powerful. He's a hypnotist, or whatever names we want to use. He retained the power and ability to mislead us. And he has dedicated himself to that. That's his purpose for existence. To mislead as many of us as possible, to keep us disputing about the truth and confused. We know many times in areas where there are droughts, they will spray the clouds, they will seed the clouds in an effort to make it rain. Seeding the clouds in itself does not make it rain. There's no conclusive proof at all in the first place that seeding a cloud will make it rain or not, because Allah still controls the processes by which it rains. But what man learns is he learns some of the laws and principles governing rainfall. But he forgets the lawmaker. He learns laws, he learns rules, but somehow Satan has hypnotized him where he can't make the logical connection between the law and the rule and the lawmaker and the ruler. So he disputes. Any questions in the first 8 verses? Comments?
Well, we need to comment on the first, on the title of the surah. You know, a believer appreciates God differently from people who are unaware or who are not strong believers. You can see here that the title of the surah is the winds, and we learn from the first few verses that the winds, their main job is to carry clouds that bring bounties. We need that water. So in order to appreciate God and these simple words, just imagine yourself sending 10 astronauts to space. You sending 10 astronauts to space, and you tell them, okay, you're going to be out there for 3 years, and when you need water, I made an invention in the spaceship, so there'll be these clouds on top of you and they will give you water. You're sending them into space. And you devise that system that will give them water, clean water. When they pollute the water they have on the spaceship, it's going to, you know, one of the number one purification processes is distillation. So when they pollute their own water, it's going to evaporate, it's going to be pure water and come down again. So you tell them that, so to assure them that they will have enough water supply for 3 years, or 5 years, 10 years, whatever you're sending them. Just imagine that. See, God sent this spaceship with 5 billion astronauts. You and me, we are astronauts. That's right. And God gave us this system. God devised this system where the water evaporates and then comes down by the wind, drives the clouds here. How far are we from the ocean? We're far from the ocean. But these clouds came to us from the ocean by the wind. It's a traveling system. And then it sends down pure water. You appreciate God if you think, if you imagine sending 10 astronauts in space and you tell them, I'm going to give you the exact percentage of oxygen for you to breathe. Now in 1967 we were technologically advanced people. In 1967. But we put 3 astronauts in a capsule in an atmosphere of 100% oxygen. Pure oxygen, right? To breathe. And all it took was a spark. And the 3 astronauts were combusted. Ed White, Gus Grissom, and Roger Chaffee. They are not with us today because of that. We were really advanced in science. But when you put anything in pure oxygen and light a match, everything will be combusted. Everything organic, that is. In fact, this is for chemists. If any chemist is here, this is the last thing you do to find out if there is, for example, radioactivity in the ashes of anything. You put it in a closed thing there, you fill it with 100% oxygen, and you create a spark. And everything will be combusted into ashes. This is what happened to the 3 astronauts. And that's why God didn't give us 100% oxygen. We have 20% oxygen. The rest is nitrogen. And this is what they do now. When they send astronauts into space. But they learned the hard way. So, despite we were sending people to the moon, and we couldn't give them the correct atmosphere. So these few verses here will make us appreciate God if we think of sending our own astronauts into space. Of course, you know how the oxygen is generated for us. We breathe it and we get out carbon dioxide, which is not good for breathing. So God designed the trees so they will take carbon dioxide and turn it into apples and give us the oxygen. They take the carbon and give us back the oxygen. How do you like that for a system? Can you do that for your astronauts? You tell your 10 astronauts you're going to be out there for 10 years and you're going to breathe out carbon dioxide, so I'm going to give you a couple of I invented these plants or something that will take your carbon dioxide, turn it into food for you, and you get the oxygen back. Such is God's creation. And you think it's all evolution, right? Are there any questions on these? The winds and the rains and bounties? We're talking only about the 5 billion human beings. You forget the 10 decillion ants and the about 200 billion mice. Ahsan? There may be a few of them in this mosque running around. The name scares her, this is what I said. Okay, back to Douglas. Yes, Kathy. No. Did you take a bath today? What did you use? Used water? Yeah. That's it. That's not allegorical. You actually used water. Oh. The verse says removes the devil's touch. Well, I have to think about that. No, it's in the Quran, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's I can think of a few things.
I think your translation is picking it up. I think that understanding is from earlier translation. I think your translation is that he removes the devil's curse and then found water to cleanse you or something like that. So it's not.
It's not connected. Yeah. Okay.
I believe it's.
You want to read it?
Because it slumbers to pacify you and sends down water from the sky to clean you therewith, and removes the devil's curse from you.
It's a separate issue.
Reassures your hearts and strengthens your foot.
These are all separate issues. But one of the things we use water for is taking a bath to clean ourselves.
Surah 8, verse 11.
You can tell your astronauts when the water comes down in your spaceship, you can take a bath.
8 and 11 equal 19.
Yeah. George, go ahead.
However,
taking advantage of his nervousness.
However, deviating to those who are supposed to deviate, woe to the falsifiers, who are heedless in their blunders. They ask, when is the day of judgment? That is a day when they suffer in hell. Taste your retribution. This is what you defiantly challenged. As for the righteous, they have deserved gardens and springs. They receive their Lord's blessings in return for their works. Rarely did they sleep the whole night. At dawn, they used to implore for forgiveness. A portion of their monies was set aside for the needy and deprived. In the earth there are signs for those who are certain, even within yourselves. Do you not see? In the heaven is your provisions and everything that is promised to you. By the Lord of the heaven and the earth, this is as real as a fact that you speak. In verses 9 through 23, God is telling us in verse 9 that the deviators are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And one of the reasons why they are supposed to do this is because they've chosen to do it. They have chosen to follow Satan instead of submit to God alone. They've chosen to deviate, and because they deviate, they're going to meet the consequences of it. And the consequences of it, as we know, are hell. And we know in this so-called modern age, scientific age, people like to appear what they think is intelligent or have scientific minds. So there are a lot of people, you say, you believe in heaven and hell? Well, I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. There's not too much proof about it. People like to pretend as if, some people like to pretend as if they need more information before they can be confident that there is a day of judgment. Well, if you say there's a day of judgment, when is it coming? Well, now they've asked the question. They continually ask the question, and God knows they were going to ask the question, and now they've received an answer, and they still don't want it. Now, God has revealed through the code when the day of judgment will come, and they still do not want it. So they are deviating because they're supposed to deviate. Their deviation is not because they are sincerely seeking the truth and they're just simply ignorant, or they just don't know where to look and when to look. We're told in Surah 74 that the code and everything associated with the code exposes the hypocrites. It exposes the non-believers. You know, as we grew up and we were children, or every now and then we may, for example, like we're driving down the street or the road and we'll see a warning sign, don't turn left. Somebody say, you better be careful, don't walk that way anymore. We're surrounded by warnings. We don't take them all with the same degree of seriousness. Many of them we totally ignore. We feel, well, it's not going to happen to me. And this is the way these disbelievers and falsifiers are. When they're warned about the day of judgment and they're warned about hell, to them it doesn't make me any difference. God says in the Quran, the human being is prone to only believe in what is in front of his face. He only wants to believe what he thinks he can feel and touch in front of his face. And one of the things that I was thinking about the other day is when we went along with Satan and didn't come out and declare that only God is God and that He is absolute, we were then put in this world. We could no longer stand the presence of God because we entertained doubt in His power. And when we were brought into this world, our bodies were made visible to us. Now, if we listen to what God is telling us, He's saying our bodies were made visible to us when we came into this world. Well, that implies that our bodies and everything else that's visible to us in this world is not permanent or is not absolute, because we came from somewhere else that made our bodies visible and made us see the things in front of our face. See? So what happens? Satan deceives us and whispers to us, and we begin to believe that the only thing that's real is what is visible to us, despite the proof. So God, in His mercy and His absoluteness, revealed the miraculous code, revealed an irrefutable proof in the highest form of, scientific language, mathematics, right in front of his face, and he still denies it because he is supposed to deviate. And we see that as a result, the people, the falsifiers, have to taste their retribution, and they will suffer in hell because they defiantly challenged all of the signs of God. They defiantly challenged the revelation. They defied and opposed God's messenger. And we know that the Mohammedans, the false Muslims, defiantly opposed the miracle of the Quran. And we know that they also defiantly opposed Rashad as the messenger of the covenant. In contrast to these people, the righteous will be rewarded. And as we know, the descriptions of heaven and hell in the Quran are allegorical. They are termed in ways that make us think of pleasure and contentment and happiness, life, fruit, well-being, gardens with water and springs and flowers and food. But we know that we cannot describe heaven or hell. What is the bargain? What is the bargain for those who are righteous, who heed the signs of God? They receive their Lord's blessings. There is obviously no greater bargain, but only a believer is guided to see that. Only a person who submits and desires to submit to God is guided to recognize that that is the greatest bargain, that is the greatest promise possible in this world. And it's not free. We're told in the Quran, do not think that you are going to be allowed to say you believe without being tested. We all have to go through tests in life, different circumstances, situations, to increase that belief. And inshallah, hopefully, until it approaches a point of certainty, we don't question what Allah says in the Quran. We don't question His signs. We're certain. Mahmoud and I were talking the other day, and when you read about the descriptions of heaven for the believers, in light of the fact that we know that every letter of the Quran is divinely fixed and from Allah, we know that every statement in the Quran is true. We are certain that every statement of the Quran is true. And we were kind of laughing the other day, saying that it's a wonder that believers don't commit suicide to get to heaven as fast as they can. But we know, because we know that it's true. We know. What are some of the things that the righteous do in order to get this reward? We're told that they don't, during the night or after sunset, they pray. They make their evening prayer, their night prayer. Or they spend their time in reading the Quran or some form of worship. Not the entire night, but they don't spend their night in idle play or things of no benefit to them. And at dawn, at Fajr, wake up and make the Fajr Salat. The righteous recite their prayers 5 times a day because they know and they understand that making their salat is contact with God. It's contact, and it's building up credits, and their soul is growing, so that their soul. Okay, I don't don't know. I don't really know the details of
No,
that.
this is an example. But
Okay.
it's a phenomenon that
I'll give you an
you believe in
example.
it, but you don't see it.
I'll give you an example. None of us have ever seen an X-ray, but we know what happens if we get exposed to too many of them. Gamma rays. In other words, man is capable of learning that certain things exist that he cannot directly perceive because of the effect that it has on him. If he can rule out all of the possibilities of anything else in the environment, he knows that there's something there that's causing this cancer or causing this genetic mutation to take place. And he tries to learn and discover it, and if God wills, he learns that there is some invisible energy, an X-ray or a gamma ray that passes through his body, something like that. He can't see it himself. Just like when when a person goes to the doctor to get X-rays, when you see the picture, that's not the ray itself. See, that's an after image or a trace that is actually seen. So the doctor or the nurse looks at the trace and knows that that was an X-ray or a particular type of ray that passes through the person. So one of the ways we know that, well, obviously this is a proof that all that exists isn't limited, obviously, to what we directly perceive, because so much around us affects us and influences, and we cannot directly perceive. Does that answer?
Yeah, just I think you quoted another verse that God is saying this, and then you understand this, explaining.
Okay, what I was telling you, what I was referring to is the fact that, like, if we look up in the ceiling and we see that light, that's because of certain stimuli. That's because of certain colors and light waves that are hitting our eye, right? That has to do with the light waves and the nervous impulses and what have you that eventually lead to the sense that that is a light. I see the light. Okay.
But you don't see electricity.
Right. I don't see the electric. I can't see the actual light wave. See. So in that sense, what I was trying to say is that man really limits himself when he says that he only wants to believe what he can see.
But we know that a lot of people don't do that, especially these days, the advance of science. That's what makes science advance. So people see things that physically you cannot see it, but use of their brain and brain power and imagination, they can see things that everybody can see them, but some people can do it. And that's the difference between other people.
You're in trouble, Douglas. Martha's going to ask you a question.
No, actually, I may be sort of using this with Study Sura and ourselves, but we know so much about a lot of things, but we have no idea what is the process whereby we hear each other speak and somehow understand what that person is saying. We just zero, absolutely nothing. We know that it happens, but we don't know, we don't understand by what mechanism the ear receives these waves and then somehow takes these waves and translates them to something that then goes into our brain. We just don't know. We simply have no idea how this thing happens, and we do it. 4-year-old children do it. 2-year-old children do it. I mean, language is just amazing now. One that we don't understand.
This is mentioned specifically as a great miracle in the Quran, the languages. Just go to Europe, and
Well, we don't doubt it.
where
We don't doubt the fact that we're speaking.
within a radius of 50 miles, not 50, 20 miles, in Europe, you can come across 15 languages. Around Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Austria. Within Czechoslovakia, there are several languages, and it's just amazing how these people understand each other, but these people don't understand them. They understand each other. And
Even if we
it's a
all
miracle.
know the same language, it's still huge.
Still amazing.
An incredible miracle and a mystery to us at this point in our understanding. We just simply don't have the beginning
Some people even speak Turkish.
It's like with math, it's like it's a language, but it's universal.
Right.
Like one and one equals two.
You know,
Math is about audible, yes.
the first major sense that we develop in the womb is hearing. Hearing is almost fully developed in the womb before birth. Before birth.
It's amazing you remember that. Okay, verse 24.
Lessons from the past. Abraham. Have you noted the narration about Abraham's honorable guests? When they entered, they said, "Peace," and he said, "Peace to you strangers." He then asked his family to prepare a fattened calf. He offered it to them, but they did not eat. He became wary of them. They said, "Do not be afraid," and they gave him good news of a knowledgeable son. His wife came in astonishment, pointing at her face and saying, "I am a sterile old woman." They said, "Your Lord said thus, He is the most wise, the omniscient." These honorable guests that came to see Abraham were angels. They were actually on their way to Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were commissioned to go and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because the people of Lot had reached the point of no return in terms of their opposition against God, the practice of homosexuality and other kinds of wickedness. And so their destruction was already written. It was already predetermined. And when they went to Abraham's house, he gave them the greeting of welcome as a believer. As we know, God commands us in the Quran to greet the people with a hearty greeting, to give people a sense of welcome. And they returned it. But when he offered them the food, they didn't eat it. And at this particular time, in Abraham's culture, whenever you went to someone's house and they offered you of their table and you did not eat it, this would arouse suspicion and sometimes fear. Because a guest should eat of the offering that the host makes. And he became somewhat worried as to who they were and what they wanted. And as we see here, they told him not to be afraid, and they told him that he would have a son by his wife Sarah. And she could not believe it, obviously, because of her age. And she asked in a different way the same question that Mary asked when the angel went to her and told her that she was going to have a son. And we know in Surah 4, she said, "How can I have a son when no man has touched me?" And the angel let her know that Allah could cause life and create the birth of a child, or the conception of a child in the womb of a woman anytime He wills. He created Adam and Eve out of nothing. And I think this was Isaac.
Right.
Okay, this was the birth of Isaac. And this was a miracle as well. The birth of Isaac was a miracle. So we see that God blessed Abraham with many, many signs. We know that in the Quran God told him to place 4 pieces of a bird on different hills.
4 birds.
4 birds on different hills, and call them together and they would come.
Many pieces of 4 birds.
Here we have his wife having a child well beyond the age which is normally possible for a woman to bear a child. We have the influence of Satan in the dream, where he thought he was told to sacrifice Ishmael. We also have the miracle when Abraham's father was such a wicked, he was so defiant, so arrogant, and so wicked when Abraham confronted him that he actually built a fire to cremate him, to cremate his own son. And we know in the Quran that Abraham sat in the fire until the flames died down and he walked out. The power of God, the power of Allah. Blessed with many miracles, many signs.
No, Ishmael.
Any questions or comments?
There you said it, his only son. Isaac was never the only son. You said the truth right now.
Isn't that the reason they say it is because Isaac was his own legitimate son, like his own wife.
This is how they justify it.
But it's
It didn't say take your only legitimate son. It said take your only son. Even if he's illegitimate. But he was not illegitimate. Did you say you take your only son or your only illegitimate son?
but according to the Bible, it's Isaac, isn't that
No.
what the Jews believe? That it's Isaac?
Somebody, of course, the Jews and the Christians believe it was Isaac. But that's a racial distortion. They said take your only son, comma, Isaac, comma. So they made a boo-boo there, because Isaac was never the only son. So when you tell them, when you confront them with that only son business, because Ishmael was 14 years older than Isaac, they tell you, oh, it's because Isaac was the only legitimate son. They said, okay, let's look at the Bible. And the Bible consistently calls Ishmael Abraham's son until Abraham dies, and then they say, when Abraham died, his two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, buried him. So there's no way out. No, he didn't. No, you read it in some novel. From who? No, it's not in Genesis. No. Okay, Abraham had. Sarah was sterile. She didn't have anything but Isaac. Yeah, there are lots of novels that he said he married this and that. Okay. If you had any other children, they are irrelevant because the Quran and the Bible mention only Ishmael and Isaac. Nobody else. His two sons.
And that would be an internal contradiction because there is other mention of other sons than that right in the Bible.
I don't think so. I don't remember.
Actually, that's not really.
But anyway, this is the in Genesis 22. In Genesis 22, around 25, it says, when Abraham died, his two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, buried him. So Ishmael was Abraham's son. He was the only son of Abraham for 14 years. Isaac was never the only son.
What would be, what would be the point though of making
Isaac is the father of the Jews. Ishmael is the father of the Arabs. The Jews wrote played around with the Genesis, the Torah.
So the idea is that they just wanted the miracle to be a miracle with Isaac.
Right. They don't have anything to Ishmael to have anything to do with anything. So they made a big mistake. It's got just like the two verses in the Quran. Exactly. They made a glaring error. And they try to correct it in the newer editions of the Bible. They say take your only one. Trying very hard, but they make it worse. Your only one what? Donkey or? I mean. It was just another town. It was just another town.
So there wasn't a period of Ishmael's life that was somehow that
about 3 or 4 weeks. 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Okay, back to this. And 31.
Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham said, "Where are you going, O messengers?" They said, "We're being dispatched to guilty people. We are to shower them with stones of clay, marked at your Lord for the transgressors." We then delivered all the believers. We found only one house of Muslim submitters therein. We set it up as a lesson for anyone who fears the painful retribution. Abraham knew that they were messengers of God, that in this context angels are messengers of God. They carry warning, they carry the revelations, the knowledge, and they also carry out commands from God. It's interesting in terms of the earthquake in Armenia. After the devastating earthquake, they had a lot of people on the news conjecturing, and one of the major conjectures they came up with was that Armenia is an earthquake fault. It's a fault area. They began to conjecture. I mean, there's nothing wrong with theorizing, but what we find is that when these disasters take place, most people don't, well, at least the people who are allegedly the ones who are so-called experts or the people who are paid to give their opinion, they make no mention of God. That doesn't mean that some of the people don't, but they seem to be locked up or blocked out at any suggestion that there is a greater power at work that causes these devastations, let alone produces the bounty and benefit. They refuse to believe that there is a God, an intelligence, that this is by design, that there are laws and rules. They want to believe that it's either by haphazard, you see, or simply due to some malfunction or something off in the earth's structure, just as an example. And the messenger angels were dispatched to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, and we know that they were showered with volcanoes, tremendous earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And it completely destroyed that area of land, totally. It was so much devastation, fire and heat, that we know that the salt plains, it created miles of salt plains where there has been tremendous heat. And it's proof in verse 34 that these types of disasters are commanded by Allah, and the people who die in these disasters are already determined. They're already identified. In other words, only God controls the time of death, and also people who are disbelievers are identified by God. And this is one of the things we see in verse 34, marked at your Lord for the transgressors. That these stones, volcanic ash, this heat, this lava, all of this was marked. No transgressor, not a single transgressor could leave Sodom and Gomorrah. Just a small family of believers who were with Lot were saved. And it doesn't make any difference if you've got a seismograph in your living room to tell you if there are tremors in the earth. I mean, I'm saying it doesn't make any difference what kind of alarm system you've got. Your best alarm system, and I'm not dismissing that, I'm saying the best alarm system is submitting to God alone in this life, period. Because we know that God is the one that controls all things. God controls, circumstances. A human being is supposed to take precautions, use his or her intelligence, but to also understand that God controls all things. And you can have all the alarm systems and safety devices and all kinds of things you want. But if a circumstance is to befall you, or you were to come upon a certain circumstance, there's nothing going to do to stop it from happening, if it has been already written. And God says in verse 37 that the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was set up as a lesson. Not only for a lesson for the survivors with Lot, but for all time, our generation and generations to come. Because those salt plains are still there for anyone to see and to reflect on the magnitude of that disaster. And if someone says, well, what brought this about or what caused it? Well, again, we know that the code has confirmed that every word and sentence in the Quran is true. It's fact. And when a person is given the opportunity to be exposed to the code, to all of the information, and they sincerely want to believe, they know that the Quran is from God. And if God tells us what was behind the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Are there any questions and comments?
Here and in Armenia now they're celebrating Christmas 2006, and during the service they were saying they were comparing it with Noah's Ark, saying only the believers are saved, and nothing in the earth is permanent. It was interesting. They were talking about Jesus and all this.
They don't learn, do they? Haven't learned a thing. People bring the destruction on themselves. We know that with Sodom and Gomorrah, they were all corrupted beyond reform. And this is the one thing that they brought it on themselves. So it is God's law that when they do this, they are destroyed. Nowadays, where homosexuals are spread in the society, you cannot just destroy the city of Tucson because there are 1,000 homosexuals in it. But you can send a virus to pick them out. And this is what's happening now.
What happens to the children who are not homosexuals?
Their parents brought it on them.
What if they got it through blood transfusion?
Right. They brought it on themselves. Their family take the children out of God's protection. So this is what happens. It's actually a blessing for the children after all, but whatever disaster happens is because the parents removed their children out of God's protection.
How can the parents' action be relevant to the fate of the destiny of the child?
Okay, we discussed this before, and we said when the parents do not follow the commandments, God assigns to their homes souls that deserve whatever is going to happen. The children are not so innocent as we think. Remember, Adolf Hitler was a cute child. Hitler was a cute, innocent child. But God knew in advance that he's going to be a tyrant. So was Gaddafi. Do you understand, Babak? Do you understand the point? The babies who will be born next year, where are they now? Remember, we existed before the earth came into creation. Okay, the children who will be born next year, where are they now?
Not here.
Right, they're in some depository, waiting their turn to come into this world. Now, you agree that God knows which ones are good and which ones are bad, right? Okay, God told the people in the Bible that if you don't keep the commandments, you will remove yourselves from God's protection for 4 generations. So what is the mechanism? What is the mechanism here? It's that when a baby is born in a certain home next year, God will assign a certain soul to that home, right? So God does that. He assigns the souls to the homes and the environments where they grow in. So God can pick out a good soul or a bad soul depending on what the situation is. So the people who pass AIDS on to their babies, they brought it on themselves because they use drugs but AIDS is mainly a homosexual disease. There's no question about it.
I was talking about children who are, for some reason or another, need blood transfusions. And
Right.
they get blood transfusions not from their parents. Not that the parents have AIDS or drug use.
From the blood, yes.
Whatever.
Even those.
But they get AIDS because of some other jerk who had AIDS or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And I just think of them.
Okay, we are in an era now where a believing house will not need a blood transfusion to start with.
We don't. I'm sorry.
We are in an era where when you believe in God and follow His commandments, you will not need a blood transfusion to start with, neither you nor your family. Maybe difficult to fathom, but this is God's promise throughout the Quran.
I'm sorry, I don't mean this. I hope it doesn't happen. But if you go outside the street and there's an accident, you lose some blood, and
Well, that's what I'm saying. This will not happen to start with. God says He'll protect you from anything like that. If it has to happen, God will protect you and will give you clean blood. But I'm saying that it will not happen to start with. Okay, let me, because this is difficult to understand, and I'm not bragging or anything, but I thank God first. I want to tell you, I'm speaking from experience. And I mentioned this, it'll be boring to a lot of these people here because they heard it before. But when I was a child, I used to go swim in the canals in the countryside, the village. And there's a disease in Egypt that if you swim in the canal, you have to catch that disease called bilharzia. It is still epidemic in Egypt. And every year they'll take the children and check them for bilharzia through a urine sample. Huh? Right. Well, they asked them, yes.
They never even bothered checking.
Right.
They just did it. Line them all up and gave them a shot.
These are the ones they knew they swam in the canal, right? Well, I was living in a city, so they checked all the children, at least in my time. We'll take a urine sample and check them for bilharzia. And every time I'll come out negative. And they'll ask me, did you go to the village this summer? Yes. Did you swim in the canal? Yes. Okay, now they send the nurse with me to make sure that I'm giving them a urine sample, not a faucet. Not the sample from the faucet. They'll go with me and they'll take the sample and it'll be negative. And they'll go home and my father will ask me, did they check you for bilharzia? I say, yes. He said, what did they find? He said, nothing. And my father shook his head. It's God's protection. So I learned that from an early stage. So you can live in the virus, live in the germs, and God will protect you. So I guess God knew that I'll be passing this information on to you. And before I do anything, I thank God for His protection. Then I'm talking to you from experience. It will not happen. When you're a believer, it will not happen. You will not catch AIDS. You will not need transfusion. You will not have an accident. You don't even get traffic tickets, depending how good you are. You will get these as pinches whenever you do something wrong. But for as long as you are sincerely searching for God, God will give you time, will protect you until you make a decision. Your decision would be to remain in God's protection or step out of God's protection. So it's your decision. God left it in our hands.
But I'm saying that everybody dies at some time.
That's right.
Every one of us is going to die.
Yes.
For one reason or another, accident, cancer,
That's right.
whatever.
Yeah, but
And it's going to happen. So
yes. Well, death is not a disaster. Death,
that was in Egypt.
no, death is a fact of life. I mean, each one of us.
Now, the impression that I'm getting is that you're saying that God is going to protect us from all
That's right.
evil and all harm.
That's right.
And as long as we believe nothing harmful is going to come to us. But at the end, maybe at the age of 90, 95, 100, or whatever,
Yes.
we're going to die. And we're going to die of something.
That's right.
We're not going to stop.
No, but there are different